What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Guilty as Charged podcast, presented by Blue Wire Podcast Network. My name is Steven, and I'm the host as always. And joining me is my guy, Tyler. Tyler, I appreciate the flexibility tonight. Usually we record Thursday at 5 p.m. Utah had a nice football game today, so I appreciate you being willing to wait it out with me. Appreciate everybody in the chat for waiting and catching up with us tonight as well. But what's up, man? How you doing?
Doing pretty well. I had no excuse. What are you doing at 9 p.m. on a Thursday? Nothing. So I can make myself available. How was that for you? How was that opening victory for Utah?
It was a lot of fun, man. It really was a lot of fun. This was the biggest home opener in Utah history. This was the first time the University of Florida has left the state of Florida for a non-conference football game since 1991. This is the first SEC team that Utah has ever hosted. So it was a big game. Obviously, needed some revenge for last year as well, and defense came out firing, and it was a ton of fun to watch.
Who's the guy to watch this year? Who's or in the draft, I should say?
Yeah, so from a draft perspective, I think Utah has a couple of guys that could be top 100 picks. The first one is Cole Bishop. If you watch the game, you saw him all over the field. He had a forced fumble. He had a sack. He's their safety. I think he has a chance to be the best safety in Utah history, and that's a program that has really cranked out some really nice safeties, as we very well know. Offensively, they have a great left guard named Keaton Bills. He's an older guy, but he's one of the best run blocking, pass protecting guards in the country, in my opinion. He was dominant tonight. Florida, as we talked about beforehand, has a 440-pound defensive tackle, and Keaton Bills made light work of him in the run game today. So those are the two main guys. There's some other ones that could be late round picks, but Cole Bishop definitely should be a guy that is on people's radar if you're an NFL draft nerd.
Yeah, I love it. And by listen, you're a Utah fan, so like I semi root for them because I want you to be happy and stuff like that. But I've come to like some of these Utah players. Obviously Dalton Kincaid, tight end 1, Devin Lloyd, linebacker 1, that sort of thing. Even Ford, even Daniels. Is it Ford? The interior
the center.
Yeah. Him, Daniels, those guys. I've grown to like some of these Utah players. So Bishop sounds awesome. Good luck to you guys this year.
Yeah, I appreciate it. You always know what you're going to get out of Utah players when it comes to their evaluation. Tough physical guys. So the Cam Rising towards ACL in the Rose Bowl, and then the backup quarterback lacerated his kidney in a scrimmage. So Utah's third string quarterback is a literal pig farmer. He's from this tiny little town in Utah, and his family owns a pig farm. And that's kind of like the encapsulation of Utah football, man. Just tough, hard-nosed guys, and it's a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, everyone seems to suggest that your coach, like that, just finds guys. They're not always. I don't know if the recruiting class has changed and shifted into being like a top 10, top 5 sort of place, but regardless of who they have, it just seems like they find ways to be competitive.
Yeah, it's improved a ton over the last few years. This past recruiting class that are freshmen right now, I think, was a top 20 class. So we'll see how that goes. But I appreciate you really being willing to talk about some Utah football tonight. Obviously, have a lot of Charger stuff to get into as well, with the finalizing of the practice squad, as well as a kind of surprising roster decision on the 53. Let's start with that one. The Chargers ultimately deciding to claim linebacker Tanner Muse, and in a corresponding move, deciding to move on from Zander Horvath. Although it sounds like he's going to be on the practice squad. Apparently, he's at the facility today. We kind of penciled him in, right, because of his special teams ability. I'm not super surprised that they're moving on from a fullback, because that's not super valuable in Kellen Moore's offense. But what do you make of this decision, Tyler?
Yeah, it's not a surprise in that regard, right? And at this point, we had accepted the fact that this was him making the roster for the day that he did, was not going to be about him on offense. And we had talked, and we had been sort of concerned with his roster spot potentially before camp. Like, okay, Kellen Moore does not use fullbacks, or he has not the last 3 years. And lo and behold, we get to training camp, and he's like absent most of the days that I'm there. I think it took until like 2 weeks in for us to finally hear he got like that one, roll out bootleg, 4th down throw sort of thing. And it's like, okay, there's the play. But that was it. And so, but I just figured, okay, maybe like a Nick Neiman, like an Eamon Ogbongbemiga, maybe never seeing these guys on their sides of the football, but they're special teamers, and that's why you keep them. And then, of course, they cut him. So it counts for us in the sense that we picked him to make the roster, and he did. Yeah. It just lasted not very long. And I was really wondering, okay, well, you're having another 6th linebacker. Interesting. Why would you carry 6 linebackers? I get why you could have 6 last year because Kava and Oy was like half of one, but partially edge as well. So, okay, maybe you can carry 6. And then you find out that Deion Henley had a hamstring injury. So a lot of moving parts, a lot of different things. It's a bummer that Henley has this hamstring injury. Hopefully not too concerning, but claiming a linebacker that quick and cutting your fullback, I don't know. I hope for the best for Henley, but it sounds like some bad luck to start.
Yeah, I don't know. Brandon Staley wasn't super keen on like providing a timeline here. So I'm not going to rush to, think that this really is about Deion Henley. Although maybe we can talk about this, having a little bit more confidence in Tanner Muse right now. But, Tanner Muse was one of the best special team players in the league in 2022 for the Seattle Seahawks. He was a guy who I think had the 2nd most snaps of any player in the league in terms of special team snaps. He almost had 400 total snaps on the year. So he's a guy that they're going to trust right away as a special teams player. And Brandon Staley said as much, that Ryan Ficken and Chris Gold were super high on his ability as a special teams player. For what it's worth, I think he was the highest graded coverage linebacker in the preseason. That's really who he is. He's, if you look at his preseason snaps, there's not a lot of run defense. It's a lot of coverage snaps. So honestly, like, he is kind of a similar player to like what I would have expected out of Deion Henley this year, which is, some 3rd down snaps on defense, coverage snaps, some pass rushing every now and then. Maybe you can put him out to the slot a little bit against bigger tight ends. That's kind of what Tanner Muse has been in the NFL. Again, not a sub down player at all. He's exclusively like a 3rd down linebacker. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do with Mr. Tanner Muse, but I am a little surprised that they moved on from Horvath so quickly, because we all heard like from day one of training camp, like, he's great on special teams. He's our guy on special teams. We really love him on special teams. He's core 4 special teams player, and he's the one that they cut. If they had decided to cut like a Stone Smart or Trey McKitty, I would have been like, yeah, I totally get it. But
sure,
cutting Horvath, I think, is an interesting decision here.
Yeah, and then I'm curious who makes up for his role, because yes, there are maybe some things that Tanner Muse could do fine, but there's a whole blocking part of it that just has not really been Ryan Ficken's style in terms of the 2 guys that are in front of the returner. So, is it now Joshua Kelly, Isaiah Spiller? Is Dotson involved? Do you want both your backups behind? I mean, I guess you have to. Both your running backs behind Austin Eckler to be involved in that regard. I guess so. So it's just a surprise. You spend so much time with Zander Horvath clearly as your starting guy. Like, it's not like he was the 3rd guy, the 4th guy out there, and he played some fullback, and like he was the guy. Like, he was consistently one of those guys out there. So it's a bit of a surprise in that regard, because I don't really know what their plan is after that. Like, obviously, look, in Ryan Ficken we trust, but it's just like you go through the entire preseason with him as your guy, and then poof, like he's again, he's on the practice squad, and things could change. Maybe they go, oh, never mind, elevate him, sign him, and then this is a useless conversation. But I guess we'll see. They have a week and 4 days to find out, 3 days to find out.
Yes, week 1 is coming quick here. So, special teams, I think it maybe, points to some optimism about Elijah Dotson being able to carve out a role there. You've pointed this out on kick return. It's always been like Joshua Kelly and Zander Horvath being like the 2 guys in front of the kick returner. Maybe that becomes a place for Elijah Dotson. Maybe that becomes a place for Stone Smart, for example, too. So, these other guys are going to have to carve out a role there, and we'll see how it goes. Again, offensively, not super shocked that this was, the decision. Kellen Moore has I think you pointed out that the highest snaps from a fullback one year was like 10 or something like that. Like it's just not super common in Kellen Moore's offense.
Yeah, it was, I think his first year, and I don't recall who the player was. It was like, okay, a couple hundred snaps or something. And then it was like 3 the next 3 years total. So it's like, yeah, I don't know who the first fullback was, or if he needed to do that, or didn't want to mess up the flow of what was going on when he got there. But after he was established, it was nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I do feel like if Zander were a better blocker, I think I think this doesn't happen. And, you know, not to say that the Chargers have a great blocking tight end unit either, but, you know, I think this is an indication that maybe you can expand Stone Smart's role a little bit and, you know, use him kind of like a Steven Anderson type, like they did a couple of years ago, and pray for some development from Trey McKitty.
Yeah, I pray for sure. I suppose they must feel, if you use Stone Smart like that you can probably throw more looks out there with Stone Smart than you can with Zander Horvath. With him, you know, you're running it, it's 4th and 1, you're throwing it to him in the flat, or it's 4th and 1, you're handing
very
it
limited for sure.
And that's pretty much it. And 2 coordinators that now have basically shown that that's kind of what they think of him. You know, we thought it was maybe just a Joe Lombardi thing, and now he'll be unlocked. Kellen Moore's gone, yeah, no, I kind of feel the same way, it seems. I think with Stone Smart, you can do a bit more as a blocker and, of course, as a receiver.
Yeah, so we'll see how that one goes. As for now, the Chargers roster has not changed outside of that one spot, but we'll see if that changes this week. So big moves on the practice squad to discuss today. You know, let's talk about some of the veterans that this team has added first and foremost. You know, there is a rule in the practice squad construction that you have to have a certain amount of veteran presence versus like younger presence. So the team is not just like you can go out and sign 16 players regardless of how old they are. Like you do have to have some vested veterans on the team. So the Chargers obviously decided to bring back Christian Covington, a nice little story, defensive tackle who's been with the team previously, as well as bringing in tight end Nick Van Nett, who I feel like I've talked about on this show like 17 times previously. And then Alex Erickson, a receiver who's a bit more of a returner at this point, you know, providing some special teams depth there as well. Although our guy who spent the summer in New York said that Alex Erickson had some nice moments as a receiver as well. And then the final veteran that we have to talk about is safety Dean Marlowe, who actually played for Brandon Staley at James Madison University. So bit of a full circle moment there that can also paint to how quickly Brandon Staley has risen through the ranks there. But Tyler, what do you make of this veteran group that the Chargers have put on the practice squad?
Yeah, I wanted to go look up the snap counts and just looking between last year and this year, the practice squads. So last year's practice squad, and it was mostly just Christian Covington doing all the heavy lifting here. They had 3,200 NFL snaps to their name. This practice squad, as it currently stands, has 7,856. Nice. The Chargers are clearly leaning into not just having veterans, but guys who are, you know, good, bad, I don't know, but they have experience and legitimately meaningful experience. And that includes Hankins. He hasn't played much, but he's been in the league. So just, I think the Chargers know that at each of these spots, especially with where they added, a lot of question marks. Darius Davis, you're pretty sure you feel pretty good about. He's not being cut by any means. But just in case, let's have a veteran returner / receiver on the practice squad. You know, Chris Hinton, Scott Matlock, you feel good about them. Nick Williams is your veteran, but, you know, maybe we're not so sure. So let's have Christian Covington come back. And Otito, I still don't know about that injury. We'll find out. Tight end, nobody feels comfortable without that tight end group. I'm not saying Nick Van Nett's going to come in and be outstanding by any means, but, you know, the 700 or 800 yards that he has in the NFL is more than the other 3 guys you have behind Gerald Everett combined. I'm not saying that makes him better than those guys, but you have something there with him. And then Dean Marlowe, exactly. And Dean Marlowe, again, safety room. You have AJ Finley, who, again, we had no idea he was making the roster. Raheem Lane, special teamer, barely has played. Don't really know about JT Woods. Alohi Gilman, you feel good about him. Still don't know a lot about him. So the Chargers at all these spots where they have a lot of youth, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of, you know, very young new faces, first and second year faces. they decided to find some veteran presences behind them just in case, because they can't go into the regular season, play all these young guys and go, oh, crud, we went 0 for 4 on these guys and their decisions. And oops, we have no backup plan. So they go, okay, if we have to, we can elevate this guy here for this game, this guy here for this game. He just gets it. Maybe they're not better in the long run, but for the next 3 games or until the bye, we trust them a bit more. So I think that's a very smart move on their part. Again, 3,200 snaps in 2022, almost 8,000 this year. I think it'll make a difference for a team that really has to win this year.
Yeah, I love the way that you framed that. Just the flexibility it can give them, especially after the bye week. There are these young guys who, hey, like, Trey McKitty showed a lot of really fun flashes as a rookie. It has not worked out to him at this point, but maybe he just needed to get to the regular season, and maybe some pressure on him can light a fire a little bit. But if it doesn't, you have a guy like Nick Van Nett to come in and stabilize that position. Nick Van Nett is not an elite blocker by any means. I think he's an slightly above average blocker, but listen, man, like, that's an improvement over what the Chargers have had at the position over the last few years. He's a guy who is going to be very solid. He's going to, know his assignments, and he's going to be able to control the edges at a higher level than what we've seen from Trey McKitty and Donald Parham. So is he a guy that I expect to come in and kind of light the team on fire and just like be this difference maker? No. But I know that he'll be a solid, stable presence. And right now, like, there are some of these positions that you mentioned that the Chargers just need to either see some improvement or have a very safe floor player in those spots. And tight end is one of them. We've talked on this channel, on the Chargers channel, about how much this team wants to run the football and how important it is to have good blocking tight ends. And that has not been the case for the Chargers thus far. So you can do some things to mitigate that risk, right? Like, you can bring in Will Clapp or Jordan McFadden as an extra blocker. You can run out of 11 personnel, but eventually, like, you're going to need extra tight ends to block and contribute. And so I think bringing in Nick Van Nett and these other guys like Dean Marlowe just makes a lot of sense and elevates the floor a little bit of the depth.
Yeah, you can pull the ripcord at any point. And listen, some of these guys just need to develop, or they haven't proved it or whatever. And so you don't need to wait through the entire season to find another guy. Again, I don't know if these guys will be good, but at least you have a nice plan in place. Like, okay, our tight end blocking unit, we went into the year, went into this training camp thinking they'd improve. We haven't seen a ton. We maybe feel good about them getting there, maybe, but we aren't so sure. 2 games in, disaster. You go, all right, we've got a guy that's been here for 3 weeks now. Let's call him up. Let's activate him. So I just think that's very smart on their part. My only remaining question with that whole group and the practice squad as a whole is tackle. But then do you feel like Zach Bailey is the guy that they would bring up as a tackle, or actually is that Pleasance? And if so, how do you feel about that?
Listen, man, I thought Zach Bailey did enough to earn a spot on the roster, and I thought that he should be the swing tackle, like, period. I would hope that it's not Austin Pleasance because I think it's cool that the Chargers kept their top 11 offensive linemen, if you will. They had the 9 on the active roster, and then Bailey and Pleasance. Those 11 guys were their main guys of the training camp and preseason. But I would be very, very hesitant to trust Austin Pleasance against like legitimate starting pass rushers. Like Zach Bailey, I feel good about. I think he's proven that he can hold up against those kind of players. I think he's had some good moments in training camp against the Chargers guys. He held up well against the Saints, who were starting their main guys. So I am surprised that Zach Bailey is back. Honestly, I heard that he had other options and was considering those other options, and obviously decided to stick around and stick with a place that he is familiar and comfortable. But these players don't always make those decisions. Tywan Mullen is signing with the Eagles. I don't know if the Chargers offered him a spot or not, but some of these guys look for other opportunities and try and get onto a 53 because that's how the nature of the business works. So I think the Chargers are very fortunate to get Zach Bailey back, and I hope that he is their tackle activated from the practice squad if necessary.
Have they, in the last 2 seasons, or I guess even previously, if there's an injury to a player, have they signed an external guy that has then also received snaps at tackle, or has it just been next man up first with the swing, so then sort of Jamari, and then whoever's from the practice squad?
Last year it was just Foster. Obviously we had the he who shall not be named to ruin the Denver game at guard, so they've done that at guard. Senor Clemente, for those who don't know.
They know.
They know.
Yeah, they remember. The North, the South remembers, or whatever.
The South remembers. At tackle, though, I'm struggling to think. Maybe Joe Barksdale, but I don't remember enough about what that situation was like when they signed him.
I think they signed him to start. I feel like they had like a 3 year deal for him to. I thought he was like a summer signing. You're right. I think he was a signing for the year, then got a contract, but then after the first year of that new contract, Tevi replaced him. I don't know. Somebody knows.
But yeah, at tackle, I think it's a bit tougher. But I'm excited that Zach Bailey is back. I think that he showed a lot of great things in the preseason. That ninth offensive lineman spot is going to be inactive, right? So Brendan Hymas is not going to be like playing, but we'll see what happens there. All right, before we continue to dive into this this practice squad, do have a new ad that we have to read from our friends over at Ticketmaster. As you guys can see, I would have loved to be in Salt Lake City for the Utah game tonight, but I wasn't able to. So it's more fun to be there for the Chargers live in the stadium. And when you need tickets, Ticketmaster has got you covered. As the official marketplace of the Chargers and the NFL, Ticketmaster gives you more ways to find your perfect seat. Their interactive seat map gives you a 360-degree preview of your section to make sure you have the best view of those pivotal plays. And if your plans change, Ticketmaster gives you more flexibility to sell or transfer your tickets. Plus, mobile tickets make getting in on game day a breeze, and you can even customize your Ticketmaster app to rep your team's colors. Again, go find tickets today at Ticketmaster.com/Chargers for your Chargers tickets. Appreciate Ticketmaster for supporting the show.
Yeah, there's a few games coming up, guys. And I'll tell you what, one of the best things about going to see Metallica was actually being in the fan majority in the stands. So I would appreciate if you guys could join me in the stands as a Chargers fan, as a season ticket holder entering my 10th year. Please use Ticketmaster or whatever. Bucket's Ticket Scalper. The Ticketmaster, more verified and safer. Yeah. Use them, get there, join me, don't leave me. Every time we play the Raiders, it's like me, my dad, and 75,000 Raiders fans. Let's at least lower that just a little bit, please. Help me. help me. Help you. Let's get
that to a 50-50 split this year. That'd be great.
Yeah, please.
All right, Tyler. Let's dive back into this practice squad here. Obviously, we talked about the decision to make Max Duggan a roster cut. Chargers carrying just the two quarterbacks on the active roster, but he's back on the practice squad. What are your thoughts there?
Will Greer is also on a practice squad for the Bengals, I believe, and so I wish that could have been the switch. But this was the plan. It seemed, I don't know, all along is the right way to put it, but at least as far as roster projections, this is kind of seems what they wanted. Tom Telesco, in his interview, either with Popper or Smith, I can't remember, said that, we'd like to have him back on the practice squad. So great. Glad he's there. Again, he's not playing this year, but I'm glad he was able to stick around. You burnt a draft pick on him. So let's hope he develops.
Yeah, the Chargers obviously cutting their 7th round draft picks this week is not a great look for that 7th rounder that they traded for Dustin Hopkins, but we'll see what that becomes. Maybe it becomes a Dean Leonard. Maybe that's the positive outlook there. Yeah. But I think Max Duggan, I think they knew that he was a longer term project than people would have indicated come draft time. We'll see. Do you guys have a cat now?
No, we're watching my sister-in-law's cat, and now she decided to join the stream. So here we go. We have McKitty and a kitty.
There you go.
Yeah, not my cat. Here we go. This is Akira.
Akira. All right.
Yeah, here's Akira. There's her
All right.
butthole.
I just look up and I see see this cat crawling around. All right.
Yeah,
There we
no.
go.
Yeah.
Cameos.
Cameos.
There we go. We got Galadriel. One of these days I'll get Sully on here. We'll see how that goes, but he's kind of obnoxious. So
will he go on your neck too?
No, but so I work up here right on Fridays, and Sully always comes and hangs out like under my desk and sleeps on my feet. So it's really cute.
Jorge saying I'm Dr. Doolittle. Currently my beta fish is dead in the tank.
Oh,
so I've currently done little to take care of that. He died. Yes, he died today. So
cameos. That's funny.
Cameos. Very good.
Rest in peace to the fish, though.
Yeah. Anyway,
I feel bad.
Still better blocker than McKinney. All right. No, I'm kidding.
But yes, I think Max Duggan back on the practice squad makes sense for both sides. You know, there were some people out there saying that, you know, such and such team should go claim him. And then I just think it's tough to justify Max Duggan on an active roster based off of what we've seen from him in the preseason and in training camp. Obviously, other teams are not at training camp, but you know, the accuracy, the ball placement just needs a lot of work. And Easton Stick was the same way, to be fair, and he's come a long way. So maybe this becomes a situation that Max Duggan can really develop in. You know, and like we've talked about, I wouldn't really expect to see him on the active roster. If anything happens to Herbert or Stick, I feel like they would just go sign somebody off the street, one of these veterans out there to come in and play that role. But glad he's back on the practice squad regardless.
Yeah, the positive outlook here is that if you feel like they have similar skill sets and you can develop them, Easton Stick had to go through different coaches, different offensive coordinators, COVID, an atrocious set of offensive linemen. And it's no surprise that like this is finally the year that Easton Stick had like a really good game. The line's improved and the players have improved. And I think the coordinator has improved. So Max Duggan, if this is kind of it for Easton Stick, and you know, I don't know how long he'll stick around or how long Duggan will stick around, but Duggan will have several years to work with superior line play, coordinator, situation, etc.
Yeah, exactly. All right. In terms of the other practice squad members, you know, a lot of people thought maybe Gerard Clark would get claimed. He's back. The two edge rushers, Andrew Farmer and Brevin Allen, are back. Those are kind of the young players on defense, and obviously CJ Okoye up front that the Chargers are investing in. More defensive linemen on the practice squad this year. Obviously those four and Christian Covington. I think usually we've only seen 3 or 4 on the practice squad in terms of defensive linemen. So the Chargers get 5. Of course, CJ Okoye counts as an extra body here, but I like that construction of just adding more defensive line depth to the stables and giving them some guys that they can develop with that group.
Yeah, I'm really curious what their faith in these guys is, because last year they went, okay, we're not keeping any of these guys, and I'd rather sign, you know, 39-year-old Jeremiah Tauchu from the 2014 class than see any of these guys on the practice squad play. And then they had Derek Tuska as well. So I'm really curious. Now, Joey Bosa got hurt in the 3rd game, so hopefully that doesn't happen. I'm curious how confident they'd be in these guys. I'm assuming, I feel like Andrew Farmer would be the next guy up, but I'm curious if they would make him the next guy up. But overall, still really like this group. Gerard Clark, I'm a little surprised, honestly, that he didn't get claimed during waivers.
Yeah.
I guess it's NFL viewpoint versus, you know, scouting and, you know, draft Twitter viewpoint that seemed to like him as like an actual early day 3 pick, maybe even a late day 2 pick. Did well in the preseason. So I'm a little surprised there. I get that his role is very defined, but he played pretty well.
Yeah, you know, he was a guy we talked about on the Chargers channel, right? Like draft Twitter loved him. The Chargers paid him a really, really big signing bonus to get him here as an undrafted free agent. And then he went out and led the league in run stop percentage among all defensive linemen. So I think there's a lot of technique things that, you know, he needs to improve upon. I think Chargers Twitter really kind of overvalued him in that regard. And listen, like he made a ton of plays, but you know, it's just the pad level needs work. The hand usage needs some work. And I think just like from a conditioning standpoint, I don't think he's used to really like NFL speed on a game to game basis. So he's a project that I'm very interested in keeping around because that physicality and length that he plays with is pretty rare. But there are definitely some things that he needs to clean up, and I'm excited to have him in this room, like we've talked about with Jay Rogers. Him and CJ Okoye certainly feels like the biggest defensive tackle practice squad duo in the league. Those two guys both weighing 340 pounds. So like I said, I like the youth of the defensive line that's on the practice squad, and then you get a guy like Christian Covington that can come in and fill in some gaps as well. What do you make of Covington coming back? Because that
Tito's not ready.
I know Tito's not ready, but do we think we see Covington playing ahead of like Christopher Hinton? Like, is that something we could be seeing in the mix here? Or Scott Matlock?
Yeah, I don't know why in my brain it was easier for me to say over Scott Matlock than Hinton. Because Hinton, yes, he's been in the league longer, but it's like negligible difference in terms of snap counts. I don't know, man. Austin Johnson's fully cleared, right? There's no like he's good to go as far as we're aware.
I don't think he's going to be like 100% active. Like I do think Morgan Fox plays more than him, but like physically he's cleared, like for sure.
I mean, you don't. Well, okay. The first thing is that money is money, and if this was his only opportunity, then hey, money's money. I totally get it, but I don't know if you join this team if you don't feel like you have any opportunity to do anything this year.
Yeah.
At the same time, it's a bit of a logjam that only becomes more of a logjam if Otito comes back. And the only way Covington plays is if you would make Matlock inactive and keep Covington active. I don't know. Last year, the way they played it with Otito was he was inactive for a few games, I believe. And then they finally switched it over to him playing a lot more meaningful snaps. And then he got hurt. Is that what happened? Did Covington get signed and then play over an inactive Otito to start the season?
You mean last year, right?
Yeah.
Well, so Fehoko made the 53, and then they cut him and put Covington on the active roster. And then Covington and Otito kind of switched back and forth for
that's what it was. Yeah, that's what it was. Maybe just matchup dependent. I don't know. Maybe you feel he can play the run better than Matlock or something. I don't know. But I just don't think you come back to a situation like this that you've already been cut from technically twice. And that's kind of it. So again, money's money. If this is his only opportunity, cool. Take the money. But I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, I'm not surprised that he's back. Like he was working out at the facility all spring long up until free agency hit. And then there's like the rules that prohibit guys who are not like actually on the roster from working out. But so I kind of figured that they would bring him back at some point. I just figured that he would be with them in training camp, right? And like being on the roster.
Yeah.
But there's obviously a really good relationship there. Maybe Jay Rogers just really likes him. I think that the 6 on the roster will stay on the roster for now.
Yeah.
But Covington is a guy who I think definitely they would trust to be activated over Gerard Clark and CJ Okoye. And obviously we'll see what happens with Otito.
Yeah, no, definitely in that regard. Definitely over Okoye, definitely over Clark, respectfully. Yeah.
All right. Also on the practice squad, receivers Terrell Bynum and Keelan Doss. John Hightower not on the practice squad. I don't think I've seen him sign anywhere else just yet. But we kind of viewed Keelan Doss as that wide receiver 6, right? I think that could still be the case. I wouldn't be shocked if we saw him be activated the first few weeks. Gives them some flexibility while Jalen Guyton continues to recover. But good thing for him to come back. And Terrell Bynum, I think, would kind of a surprise. A lot of people really favored Pokey Wilson in that group, but Terrell Bynum had some really good moments and I think showed enough to this team to warrant this selection. So I would love some speed here with the receiver groups, on the practice squad. Maybe that's Alex Erickson's role, but I'm cool with Keelan Doss coming back and being that, receiver in a pinch role.
You got me there. What is Alex Erickson's RAS? What is his 40 time?
Well, he's little, so I don't think his RAS overall is going to be that high. But I think he's fast. He ran a 4.5?
4.54. Alex Erickson from Wisconsin. I'm assuming that's the same guy. Yeah, it's faster than me, so good for him.
It's definitely faster than me.
Look at that. There you go. Can he handle a jet sweep? We can do those. No, but good for Terrell Bynum. I think that a lot of this roster, too, the guys who made it, especially as the undrafted free agent, or sorry, not the roster, the practice squad, a lot of the guys who stuck around, whether veterans or undrafted free agents, it was all about that consistency. And I don't know if Bynum had as much training camp consistency to start, but I feel like maybe even from the scrimmage on, it just seemed like I just saw him always involved a couple of times, whether it's the second team, third team. So good for him. I don't know what role he'd occupy. He kind of just seemed like an odd man out compared to somebody else who had just a more explosive skill set, but he was consistent. So guys like Doss, guys like Bynum, definitely not explosive, and that could be problematic in the future, but at least they were consistent in camp.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Got a super chat earlier from Make the Transition. He says, good morning from Bahrain. He's hoping his deployment ends in time for the 23 season. I'm hoping that as well. Thank you for your service. Hope you and everybody over there stays safe, and hopefully you get to watch some games this year.
Do you just not know when your deployment ends? I don't know how that works. You don't have I don't know. Do you have to wait till the job's done? What is I don't know. I'm asking as a complete idiot. I don't know how that works, but yeah, thank you. Hopefully you're done, because the 23 season starts in 10 days. So I feel like you maybe know, but I guess not. I don't know.
Yeah, we've got a few military members who watch the show. Obviously, our guy Jason, who was our co-host initially, Anthony Hopper, who's a good friend of the show. So I don't know. I don't know how that works. I don't know if you get to pick your assignments or what. So hopefully you guys do. Okay, finishing up the practice. The Chargers decided to bring back obviously Hunter Kampmoyer as kind of that other tight end, and then the last thing that we haven't talked much about is Matt Hankins, the cornerback, from Iowa, who played on the Falcons and then was in the USFL here. So this is my one maybe concern, is that the Chargers only have one corner on the practice squad and only two defensive backs with Dean Marlowe. Little bit surprised that a guy like Cam Brown is still out there. I would have loved for Tywone Mullen to be the guy that they kept, but he chose to go elsewhere. So Matt Hankins is really their only cornerback on the practice squad. What did you make of that decision, Tyler?
I think Amici Ozadinma is also back on the practice squad.
Oh, is he?
Yeah, I saw something earlier, and then I just looked it up. He's on their practice squad listings for the Chargers website. I'll be completely honest, didn't watch him.
Is he the one that was playing receiver sometimes too?
Oh, that I don't know. That I do not know. But my guess honestly would have been, unless Mullen's path to starting is easier on the Eagles practice squad, I kind of figured it would have been Mullen or Brown. I mean, there was a debate that maybe those guys could have made the roster. Yeah. And so a surprise that it's Izudinma here. I don't know if he has a really elite RAS, and that's what they're interested in. But I feel like they had two guys who had, different skill sets, different roles, but it looked like they were pretty good guys to hang on to. And so for both of them to be gone was a bit of a surprise. But again, like AJ Finley, these guys see them every day in the film room, at the practice field, open to media, closed to media. So he must have left a pretty good impression.
Eddie's saying that Udazima is on IR.
Okay, here's the thing. I thought they did an injury settlement with him.
I thought they did too.
So
somebody else said on Twitter earlier that he was on the practice squad. Okay. But I thought it was an injury settlement, and Eddie thinks that he's on IR. I'm confused.
Well, okay. When you start getting to this part of the roster, I really Yeah, so he was waived with an injury designation. I swear there was something about him making the practice squad. And then he is currently on the Chargers website. Not
No,
under
I
injuries.
definitely saw somebody say that he was on the practice squad, but like Eddie, I also saw that he was on IR.
Right. Well,
if you're on IR on the practice squad, do you still stick around? I don't know.
I gotta find where he's actually on IR because I know he was waived. I know he's waived with an injury settlement. I just don't know if he was.
Okay.
And I guess whenever you return, you can return. I don't know.
ESPN did say that the San Diego Chargers claimed Tanner Muse, so I don't know if you saw that, but
oh yeah, I saw that. No, I saw that for sure. Like
I was like, come on, man. It's been like 8 years.
Like, look, I get maybe at first it's difficult, but in 8 years, I'm not going to refer to my wife as with her last name, the previous last name. Like, I'll use my name. Like, you figure it out. You work through it. I don't know how you make that mistake. Like, who? It feels like such a long time ago. San Diego feels like such a long time ago. Yeah. I haven't even come remotely close to making that slip up.
Yeah, there are people who will like do it like deliberately, I think, but like
no, definitely. There are definitely people with the last name Kaplan who would love to probably do that, I'm sure.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, but you're ESPN, like how does that happen? Like, come on. Yeah, so that's the practice squad. We'll see what happens there, but the Chargers right now have 16 spots taken. Zander Horvath was at the Chargers facility today, despite being cut. So I think it's safe to say he's going to be on the practice squad. So that's the 17. So there we have it there. Tyler, any final thoughts on the practice squad?
Overall, really, really good group. Obviously, I'm still concerned about tackle, even just the third one on the roster. But overall, I really like the mix of rookies, of veterans, a lot of potential versus a lot of experience. Really, really good group. You know, someone was saying, is this the deepest roster in the NFL from 53 to practice squad? I don't know, but it's certainly, I think, the best I've felt about the practice squad in a while. Like a lot of guys, they were very lucky to retain. Although I said that last year about Michael Bandy. And I mean, for a practice squad player, I think it was very good to retain him based on what he did in the preseason. But you can see the trajectory and the ceiling for growth in guys like Clark, like Farmer, like Allen, etc. Whereas Bandy was a great story and productive, but he had a limited ceiling.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think from a Chargers perspective, this is the best I've felt about the practice squad. Usually it's a lot of, project-y guys. This is, like you mentioned earlier, this is by far the most experienced group of practice squad players. I think they address their needs outside of tackle, although I think that could be Zach Bailey. But, I'm a big fan of how they went about this. And Nick Van Ent, I think, ends up playing for this team at some point. I think Dean Marlowe ends up playing at some point for this team. So those are reliable, trustworthy veterans that I think can really come in and stabilize the depth on the Chargers. So I'm excited about this group. And yes, as Eddie points out, I was just going to bring that up. So season 3 of All In premieres on September 7th, next Thursday, a week from today. The Chargers released an amazing trailer today, which if you have not seen it, definitely go check that out. We were getting so many questions about if it was going to happen on in the show, in our Discord, on Twitter. Mum was the word because we could not spoil it, but I'm very, very excited for this. And I think the Chargers are going to be doing a fantastic job. The rehab process of JC Jackson is going to be covered. The team is going to address the Jacksonville Jaguars game. So I think this is going to be way more intense of a start to All In than it has been in the past.
Yeah, I think they start the trailer with okay, week 18. Are you thinking about it? Have you moved on from it? Of course, Staley says, I think about it every day. Yeah. Sometimes I think about it every day. And I'm not the coach for the Chargers. But then I think what really, really got me was just seeing the rehab process for JC Jackson. Yeah. So how much they cover it, I don't know. But it's just watching him go through it. very emotional. It seems like they've taken quite a bit of time. Like he's documented it, sure, but they're going to get quite a bit. I don't know how much the cameras are able to roll when someone's doing rehab. I don't know how much, it's a very private thing. I would assume it's very emotional, very difficult. So whatever they got in terms of that sounds, I don't know if fun's the right word, but I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's going to be great. You heard all the stories about Staley going and talking with Steve Kerr this summer, right?
Yeah.
What did you make of that? I don't know. We never talked about it on the show because like there were too many other things, but he talked about a lot about his experience with the Warriors and working with Steve Kerr and how the Warriors came back from losing the 3-1 finals to the Cavs. And granted, it's very different, right? Because you have 15 players versus 90 to 53. But I liked what he said. I think it was on the Kay Adams show when he was saying that, like, as a coach, you have to show your players, like, I'm also working to improve. And so I think he does deserve some credit for like seeking out some unique ways to show how to properly respond from that kind of event.
Yeah, he is. I think it can be used as meme material potentially, but in terms of what he did and why he was doing it, kind of like you explained, he is a teacher at heart. His family is very much so from a realm of teachers, right? They've got that lineage, and all his coaches are teachers. Half of them were actually teachers, and the best ones are able to not just stick with their own thing and their own way of teaching, and that's it. You don't have all the answers. There are people out there, whether it's experience or success, different backgrounds, who you can have share things with you to help rebound in those tough situations. So it's tricky because sharing that is definitely something that it could be some bulletin board material, kind of make a joke, haha. But at the same time, and I think the way you put it was great. I didn't hear that from Staley. I'm going to show my players I'm improving too. And I think that's cool. That's really, really cool. And like the belief in him is off the charts. As far as I can tell, the belief in him off the charts. Every time we walk around, it's just like the vibe is that everyone wants to show how smart and amazing Brandon Staley is. Honestly, that's what the vibe seems to be. So I think doing stuff like that is how you endear yourself to everyone in the building.
Yeah, I think it's, it shows like a real growth mindset from him. And I mean, we talked about, how Dean Marlowe shows how quickly he's came into the NFL, right? Because Dean Marlowe played for him at James Madison University. Dean Marlowe's been in the league for like 8 years. And in those 8 years, Brandon Staley's gone from James Madison to head coach of the Chargers. And it like rises like that can really get to people's heads, in any kind of industry. And so I think him seeking out these kind of opportunities to learn really shows that he is doing his best to make sure that he continues to improve and continues to grow as a leader. And I think it'd be very easy for him and for any coach that's risen through the ranks like him to just say, hey, you know what? I got here on my own stuff. I'm just going to trust myself, trust my staff. And he went out and sought some outside information and input and advice. And I think that that does say a lot about just his overall style as a coach.
Yeah. And it's cool that he's able to just call up Steve Kerr.
Yeah. Apparently they're like boys.
Hey, man, that's awesome.
Yeah. Got to use those connections. All right. That's going to do it for us tonight. Appreciate everybody for tuning in. I definitely did not think that there would be this many people in the chat at 9:00 on a Thursday after a Utah game, but I appreciate it. Appreciate Tyler for being flexible. We're going to be going live on Saturday with Alex. Alex will be making his return, and we're going to dive into some of our NFL regular season predictions. Very excited about that. I've been messing with the playoff predictor, trying to figure out how I feel about certain teams, and some of it makes me very nervous, especially in the NFC, but we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I don't want to revisit what our predictions were last year. Forget about it. Those don't exist anymore. A whole different year. We'll go 100% this year. Thank goodness.
Yeah. It's very, very interesting this year. The AFC is crazy, man, but it's going to be a lot of fun. Football is 10 days away for the Chargers. A lot of great stuff coming, of course. We're going to have a great interview on the Chargers channel previewing that game, and then we'll have our deep dive back on a regular scheduled basis next week as well. So appreciate all you guys. Again, go check out the Chargers channel. Make sure to watch that video if you haven't yet. Make sure like, subscribe, leave us a rating, review, all that good stuff. We appreciate all of you. That's going to do it for us tonight. As always, bolt up.